Alright, now I'm going to show you using this stitch that I took a screenshot of from another shoe. This actually is let me zoom in, it's a stitch. So you can see there's a hole here where the needle goes in, the stitch is right here. And what I want to do with this is I'm going to create a new brush. So before I do that, in my stitch layer here, I'm going to go and just erase some stuff here that I don't want, because this brush is going to be like a repeatable brush. I'm going to just isolate just one stitch itself, and then when I use the brush it'll repeat itself. So this is a pretty fun technique because you can use images off the web or stuff that you've actually created, customized, and kind of use those, create a preset of brushes, like a little library of them, and really comes in handy. So once you create one of these, you can keep it saved in your presets here and use them over and over, so you don't have to do this every single time. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to add, because this is kind of dark, I want it to be a little bit brighter, so I'm going to go and just give this a little bit more of a bright spot up here. And then along the corners, just kind of like darken those up just a little bit. There we go. Alright, so now that I'm happy with this shape, I've erased everything around it. I'm going to show you how to create a custom brush. So over here in your toolbar, go up to New Brush, and then you'll have to select what kind of brush. So for this technique I usually use a paintbrush. And as you can see, that added it down here in the Set 02 do-it-yourself brush. What I want to do now is double click on that. That'll activate this brush properties window. Now down here under brush texture, this is the important area here. So what we want to do is we want to capture this image as a brush. Remember over here, if you want to just capture the shape, that's okay, or you can capture the shape and color. And because this is just for this white midsole, typically white midsoles, I'm just going to capture this and the color. And then another really important thing is rotate to stroke. So when we actually do this brush, when you create a curve, this shape here, on this horizontal axis, that'll actually curve with your stroke. If you don't click this or activate it, if you start going horizontally and then you curve down, this will always remain in the horizontal position. So even if you're drawing a vertical line like this stitch will have stitch lines horizontal all the way down your stroke. So you want to check that so that follows your curve. So now we have this, we selected capture. Now you can see I'm going to only capture the center of this image, and I want to capture from this entry point of the stitch to the entry and exit point of that area there, end to end. So I'm just going to scale this up, double check, scale just a little bit more, so we capture everything. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right in the center, make sure it's inside of that circular shape, and I'm going to click. Now you can see what just happened. So I captured this image, and you can see, let me move this over, you can see the position of the stitch. Now if I just start sketching, you can see it's following my path, but that's not what I want to happen. I want this to go in a single row within this groove. So if I do this, it's not really doing what I want. But there's a lot of functions in here and a lot of stuff you can control. So we're going to slide the rotation over, and then the stamp spacing. So we're just going to move this over, and then you can just kind of play with this. Now the stitching seems a little too big. We'll undo that. So Now I'm going to scale my brush down a little bit. And if you wanted to, you can make this stitch the exact size that you'd like. It's not really necessary because you can actually move the brush up and down in the size that you want. But if you wanted to control it, you could create that, and then it'll be 1-to-1 for your sketch. So that looks a little bit better. So just testing it out. So I'm going to leave it like that, and then let's just double check. So my spacing. So let's just rotate this a little bit better. The spacing like that. Okay, so now we have that. Here's your brush down in the set 02 window. So if you ever want to go back to it, you just click on that and you'll have an area and stitch for your shoe. And what I'm going to do is I am going to turn off that stitch, so that'll go away, and I'm going to make a new layer just so I don't affect anything else. So now this is a little tricky, so you have to have a pretty good hand and a steady hand for this. So what I'm going to try to do is in one stroke I'm going to try to hit that line as accurately as I can, because you don't really, it's a little harder if you want to start and stop, but let's try this and see if it works. So I'm a little bit off. Let's try this. This might work a little bit better. And what I usually like to do is start on the outer part of my image, so that that first one that comes down, a lot of times it's not lined up correctly. And if you also do a smaller scale, that also helps too. So let's try this again. So that's not bad. So we can go in now, we can erase parts that we don't want. And if you're not happy with some stuff, you can always copy and paste parts of it. You can see down here this kind of got moved a little bit, so we can leave it like that for now. So that's one technique. It's a really cool way to add stitching there. Now I'm going to just show you a manual way to add stitching for the upper. So let's start off with some lighter colored stitching for these stitches here, and I'm just going to keep this on right now, and let's scale this down and see how this works for in here. So that's not too bad, but watch what happens. Like when I scale my brush down, the spacing and the rotation also changes. So we don't want that to have that spacing. So find out what size stitch you want. So that looks pretty good. Now let's play with the spacing to get those a lot closer together. There we go. That's a lot better. So on my white leather areas, I'm just going to add the stitching to it. And then the only other area for white is on this collar. Erase those areas, and you know what, maybe I'll go back in and add another, because this stitch does actually go over top of that red heel piece. So let's do that. There we go. So we have a nice stitch in there. and then we can go in and do the same for the red area. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drop that down to where the stitch was. And I'm just going to label this so we keep track. So white stitch. Alright, and then let's do another stitch and let's try to get this onto the red areas. Now let's just make sure before we go further, let's try to get this. This isn't going to be white stitching, it's going to be tonal. So if we go here and multiply that, it's not really showing up well. So let's turn off the multiply, go back to normal blend mode, and if you change your opacity, it's just really not working right. So I wanted to kind of show you that. So we're not really going to be able to do this with this color unless you hold down your lock transparency and we kind of add some red. Add some red to that, and that's when you'll start to kind of see that stitching coming into play. Now, another little trick is we can do these in little sections. So we have this. So if you click M, press M, grab this, copy and paste it. Actually, let's copy and paste this underneath, and we'll offset it just a tad. And what this does is this gives you the ability to darken your stitch. So what I do is I have a top stitch layer and a bottom stitch layer, and you can kind of see this gives you a little bit of a shadow effect. That's a technique to be able to do that. Alright, so you can merge these two layers together. We'll turn lock transparency off, erase any overspray stuff, and then keep going. So I'll go back to my white stitch that has the scale already set up. I'm going to go in and just do this for everything else. Let me do this on another layer. And what I do is I'll start with the line that's closest to the edge. And then I'll go and erase. And then I'll just repeat. Let's erase. So now here's a problem. So we don't want to overspray here because I'll have to erase. So what we can do is just make another layer. Go back, erase what you don't want. And then, drop that down, merge that down, and let's get a couple more here. Bring that down, and we'll finish up here at the top. Okay, and then the only other thing to do is on our black logo, we'll want to put a stitch there too. So what I'm going to do is just make another layer just specifically for that, and we'll hit that. It does take a little bit of practice to really get that line where you want it, but what's nice is you can just keep undoing. So let's start off with the black stitch here, and let's just see if multiply here works. It doesn't really help. Let's try some of the other functions. So let's try screen blend mode, see what that does. It's not going to help. And then we have add blend mode, and that didn't really do anything either. So just go back to normal blend mode, and you can multiply that. And what I'll do is let's lock that transparency and add a little bit of a lighter value to it. Actually, if we go darker, be able to get a better call out there. And then, if you wanted to, you could even go in and kind of play with the stitching and kind of do some additional effects here, kind of follow it, give yourself a little bit more control over where the highlights happen. give a little bit of realism there. And then for our other layer here, you can kind of do the same thing and just go ahead and multiply that and do the same thing. Let's lock this and hit this with a little bit of a darker tone throughout. And then go back with our pencil tool. You know what, I'll just go back on that one layer. We'll just drop all these down. And you could have easily done this just all by hand. It's another simple way to do it. You could have made different brushes with the 3 different colors as well. Alright, once I'm done this, I'm going to go and show you guys one last, or a couple other things before we wrap this up. And one of them is how to add a tumbled leather texture to the white area of the leather on this shoe, and that'll really give it a lot more realism. It'll be kind of a subtle effect, but okay, and let me just drop all of these 3 down so the stitches all become one layer. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do the tumbled leather. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to activate this layer, and this is a tumbled pattern that I found on the internet. You could scan some material however you like, and you can see that this is a white leather, but it's very dark with its shadows. So I'm going to select this, and first off I just want to scale it down to the correct kind of like texture that I'm looking for. So something like that, and I'm going to just put this on the white areas just for this tutorial here. So now you can see it's not over here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this, move this over here, and I'm going to paste again because there's a spot missing up here. Alright, real quickly I'm going to wipe out a lot of the areas with the large eraser. back in and scale that eraser down. And obviously this is way too dark, so we're going to fix that in a moment. I'm just trying to kind of rough in where this tumbled pattern is going to go. Also get this off of the swoosh. Don't worry too much about, missing some stuff or whatever. It's not the end of the world. Alright, so now obviously this is way too dark, so it's already on a multiply, and we can just go ahead and play with the opacity and really kind of turn that down. And since this is on the top level, it's going right over your line work. Why don't we just bring that down? And get that kind of underneath our lines, maybe even underneath the laces. There we go, so some of your line work is a little bit more crisper. And we just want it to, just be a hint of a leather in there. So there you go. There's a lot more stuff we can do to this, but that's pretty much how to draw the Nike Air Jordan 1 basketball shoe. Thanks for watching.